You're listening to Literally First Class, the podcast for female founders behind multi-million-dollar brands and businesses. I'm your host, Keri Ford, creative director turned 3-time award-winning coach, real estate investor, mom, and the one-on-one private advisor for multi-7- and 8-figure firms. If you're ready to make your next million, expand your impact, and lead with even more confidence, you're in the right place. Let's take your life and business first class. We're back with another episode, and this episode are my 2025 predictions in both leadership and business. And it's 11/11 as I record this, so I have 11 predictions that I can't wait to share with you based on what I've observed in the landscape this year, kind of what's been coming to fruition, to be honest with you, over the last 4 years, and what's to come as a result of this post-COVID hangover that I talked about at the beginning of this year that really struck a nerve with people in a good way. We started featuring our newsletter around topics like mental health and and leadership and things like that. And it's really going to lend itself to what we're going to see in 2025, I believe. I believe that number one on our list is that if mental health is not part of your business strategy, you won't have a business anymore. Without this as part of your strategy, you're going to be burned out, overwhelmed, and you're going to have poor stress management. And I don't know about you, but I'm 40 years old, and I think a lot of us at this point in our career or in the next 10, 15 years, we're really going to need to focus on longevity. And if you didn't learn how to manage your stress, you're going to be forced to learn how to do that because you're going to get sick or you're going to get burned out because you haven't prioritized your mental health. And I think that many of us didn't learn how to do that. Like, hello, anybody else like one of the classic overachievers that was on high honor roll and parents paid them for their report card? That was me. So I think I saw like a meme or something like that floating around that was like, hey, high performers, like we aren't well. And those of us that were in AP classes and high honor roll this and high honor roll that, and we're just really performance based in school, like mental health wasn't really a conversation. Even emotional intelligence and nervous system regulation, which I'm going to get into as well. Number 2, having someone on your team or staff who is trauma trained. If you don't, this is my prediction, if you do not have someone on your team, a department, a third-party vendor that you outsource, like leadership training, wellness, protocol, all of that, if you do not prioritize this within your company or support the people in your company, if you're in leadership, this will be a problem. It goes deeper than mindset work. It's nervous system work. It's trauma-trained modalities and trauma-trained support for your leadership team. They have the most stress. Okay, I know everybody has stress. We all do. And they are just carrying a different workload. A lot of them are carrying a silent workload. And at higher levels of leadership, the challenges are just different. There are greater stakes. There are bigger goals. There are higher financial, monetary things on the line. It's just a different game. And so when the stakes are higher, there's more to lose. And the stress is really, really palpable. So learning how to metabolize this, but also move through your trauma is going to be really key in 2025. So my prediction is that if you're like me and you're an online service provider or a coaching and consulting company like we are, we're a global wellness company. If you don't have someone like this that is built into the very fabric of your company, you're going to need to hire a third party to bring that in as a consideration for leadership training, leadership development. And it's not necessarily going to be under the guise of like a health rollout. I know that like bigger companies and corporations, they have partnerships with insurance companies that do this like really fluffy BS kind of half-hearted attempt at like, let's go get our steps in. And it's like people do it once a year for a week, and that's considered their healthcare initiative. And I just think it's bullshit. It's got to be woven into the everyday fabric of our daily lives. It has to be infiltrated at a company cultural level. So if you work for a company in leadership, or you're building a company, or you work at a company, you're going to need to bring this into the fabric of your being. And by the way, this goes back to number 1 with mental health being part of the business strategy, being part of the leadership development. Like 70%, the stat is like something crazy. 70% of C-suite executives like question whether or not they even want to stay at their job almost every single day because of what it costs them in terms of stress. A friend of mine told me she didn't even want a promotion that she was up for because she has enough stress to deal with. Like, that sucks, because what if that's money that could provide financial freedom in a way that she has never had before for her family? What if it's the job that actually sets her more free? She would never know because she didn't want it, because her current level of success already feels like it costs her too much. Number 3, an upward trend, even more so than we're seeing now, in in-person events and off Zoom. You know, with the introduction of AI over the last couple of years, AI is a great tool to use and expand and utilize. And it's also fun, but it's not ever, ever, ever going to replace human in-person connection. 2 nervous systems sitting together is where healing begins. And people are still deeply craving connection in ways that they haven't even, I think, fully come to terms with, because I think we have some trauma that's unresolved from the pandemic, where we went like the opposite. Like, I'm going to just give you a couple examples here. Back when the 6-foot social distancing crap was going on, do you notice that you stand a little farther from people now? Like, our cultural closeness has been rewired. Now, in other cities, places around the world, countries, the closeness at which you speak or not is different. But here, at least in the States, I have noticed people stand a little further away. That's what they feel comfortable with. That's very interesting to me. I've also seen some trends online that I think are, again, fascinating in the way, and like, this just tells you how deeply people are craving connection. Number 1, the first way I've seen, people are hiring people to play with their hair. Have you seen this? It's called like a hair therapy session or something, where people just come and play with your hair for an hour. That's amazing, but I don't know. I guess you could make an argument like it's the same as getting a massage and hiring a masseuse. But like, I mean, it literally, the clips are people just like fucking around, like flicking your hair. So that indicates how lonely we are, how much connection we're actually seeking. I also saw, number 2, this ad, or I don't remember what the hell it was. Someone said, oh, it feels like a real hug. And I'm looking at it and wondering what it is. And it's some sort of like weighted stuffed animal that wraps around your neck and actually it makes you feel like you're getting a hug. Can you imagine you don't have anyone in your life that can actually just give you a hug? I turn to Jake all the time throughout the day and I just say, I need a hug. I can't imagine buying one of those things. Like, I get the somatic benefits and the input, the proprioceptive input with the weighted, mechanism that it is. I get why that's amazing. And I think that's great for like a weighted blanket at night. But like, this is to emulate a hug because people aren't getting them in real life. Like, what? If that's not an indication for how much we need in-person events, I don't know what is. Nothing. AI will never replace in-person human nervous system touch, body work, and connection. Energy is just different. That's irreplaceable. So people want to spend less time on Zoom and more time in person actually getting to know each other. I met one of my clients that I've worked with for 3+ years for the first time, quote unquote, in real life. And we have obviously a connection and a relationship that was only on Zoom, but it's still so different. Number 4, I believe that if you are an online service provider in the coaching and consulting space, or you're working with humans on a human level in any capacity, shape, or form, that if your programs and the way that you serve people doesn't coach or connect to the whole human and their nervous system, that your program will be incomplete and insufficient. People are looking for a 360, I feel seen, I feel heard experience. They're not just looking for business systems. business coaching is a dime a dozen. Business coaches are a dime a dozen. Teaching us a strategy with some fancy smoke and mirrors, sexy branding, dime a dozen. Just is. But somebody that knows how to coach the whole human and to see them in their humanness knows how to create results for many different types of people. Because if you know that, there's no blanket approach. There's no cookie cutter strategy because different humans bring different experiences and therefore will have different results. But you have to learn to coach the whole human. This message sponsored by Po Hung Yu. Have you ever thought about microdosing before? Maybe you've even seen documentaries like Fantastic Fungi or How to Change Your Mind on Netflix. By the way, I have a funny story about the Fantastic Fungi, but you're going to have to ask me offline. Or maybe you've heard about the extensive research happening in the best universities and the evidence showing how mushrooms are game-changing for those with anxiety, depression, ADHD, and even PTSD. So many female leaders and moms have jumped on the microdosing bandwagon to help them better manage modern-day stress. I want to introduce you to our new brand partner, Po Hung Yu. She's a self-mastery mentor, microdosing guide, and a former acupuncturist. And as a successful woman like me, like you, imagine a life where your brain and your nervous system can just relax. That's exactly what happens when you microdose and you're guided by an experienced facilitator. So you can actually be present and enjoy your life minus the anxiety, overwhelm, and stress. The best part is you don't feel high, there's no psychedelic effect, and no one will know. You can still work, be with your kids, drive, exercise, and live your normal day-to-day life. But you'll still receive all of the amazing benefits of mushrooms, like increasing neuroplasticity, flow, creativity, focus, and even your connection and intimacy with your loved ones. Not only will you receive a 15-minute consult where Po will tell you exactly how this process works so you can decide if it's a fit for you, but you'll also get a bonus of $500 off and a complimentary root cause assessment call worth over $800 when you decide to work with Po. Click the link below in the show notes to get started today. Number 5, a return to a more simplified lifestyle. I think people are deeply craving simplification in all areas of their life, and I'm going to talk about this more in number 6. But there has been a huge upward trend. Like first it was we're, being forced to stay at home, but then we see an upward trend in getting back to basics with learning how to make sourdough bread and gardening in our backyard and farm to table and just slowing things down and being disconnected and seeking social media diets and being unplugged for the weekend. I think that there is going to be even more of a return to a simplified lifestyle, whether it be a minimalist material lifestyle where you just, even more so, just clean out stuff you don't need, but also where you just crave slowing down and being more present out in nature, and having less things on your calendar. I don't think people want to be as overbooked as they've been. And that leads me to number 6. I don't think they want as many logins as they've had. Now we've been, I don't want to say forced into this because there's certainly things that technology makes easier in our life by a landslide. And then it's like there's constantly companies merging. There's constantly a new update, a new app, a new way, a new this, a new that. And it's like exhausting. I mean, anybody else have 85 emails coming into an inbox just for your kids? On average, I think I get 16 to 20 emails a week just to manage their school. And the school itself is a business and an entity and has all its things like theme day. I fucking hate theme day. All those things. And you guys have heard me joke about it. Like, oh, it's silly pants day. And I'm like, we're lucky if we have pants on at all, let alone whatever color today the day is. So I think people want streamlined software systems. I think if companies in tech are innovating solutions that are a one-stop shop that does it all, especially for online business providers, and let's be honest, most things are online because anything that wasn't before COVID now is. I think that one-stop shop tech is going to be the go-to, and people are going to transition if they haven't already. At the end of this year, they'll transition next year into like, what's one less login, and somewhere I can just log in and like do everything. So dashboards that are streamlined, software systems that are the end all be all. So in tech, I think that's what we're going to see a huge gap and room for, or also a transition to programs that are already doing that. Number 7, continued discernment about how people spend money and the types of programs that they hire people for and in. So the types of services, for example, I think people know what they want. I feel like they know what they need. I think that they are very specific on what they don't want, and they're getting clarity more and more on what they do want, and that looks like specificities in programs, the type of support, and the way that it's fulfilled. And again, that's a little more specific to coaching and consulting. But overall, I think we're going to see money trending in a positive direction with more circulation now that interest rates have dropped a little bit more and crypto is up and things there's a little bit more movement. So I think people will, be investing in programs, but the discernment will remain. People want to know that they're hiring for specific solutions, not just, general outcomes. Number 8, investments are going to be made, again, specifically in coaching and consulting, not just for who's in the room, but why they are there. Why are we coming together? What is the mission that we're coming together to do? They are not interested in paying $100K for friends anymore. I don't know that anyone with it framed that way would be, but they're not interested in who's who. They're interested in why we're here together and what this means and how it's going to enrich my life, not simply because of the connections and the network, but because of how I feel when I'm around you. And that's going to be really important because people are, it's coming to my next couple of points here. People are going to have less time in terms of how they're spending it. And I say that without, eradicating what I said about a simplified lifestyle and streamlined software systems. But I think because places are starting to actually require you to go back into the office now, like we went through this weird hybrid. And I had a newsletter that when we kicked off our newsletter series that we send out, by the way, like every week, every other week sometimes. You should get on that list. We send out this newsletter. It's amazing. When we started that newsletter series, it was all about a mental health approach. And we still weave that in for sure, because that's one of our top values as a global wellness company. But, no one was really talking about this post-pandemic hangover that I think people still have trauma from. People still are craving deep connection. People still have a level of uncertainty, and systems have unwound. They unwound completely, and I don't think that they've really come fully back together, because I think we realize that there's a lot fucking wrong with a lot of our systems. Like the school system, for example. More people are homeschooling than ever before. So with this weird hybrid, this past year and a couple years prior to that, people were like kind of getting dressed. Like you get dressed from the waist up, or you're kind of going into the office. Like maybe Wednesday and Thursday you go in and the rest of the week you work from home. And we saw like a huge upswing in remote opportunities, which is great because now you know more people that you've never known before. But people are really sick of computer screens and Zoom boxes. They really are. And now companies are requiring yet again that you go back into the office because they realize that connection actually boosts morale. They realize that more probably gets done. People are performing better, and people are actually they need nervous systems. They're isolated. It's bad for your mental health to be alone all the time. People go into depressive states. People might be in a very unhealthy, unsafe living environment. So getting out of the house and going back to work in an office is actually going to become more mandatory. It already started. And I think we're going to see less work from home, therefore less time to be on, if you're a service provider, your live launches, your workshops, your master classes, because people are spending a little more time commuting. And I'm saying they have busier schedules, but it's just filled in differently, right? I still think that they want a simplified lifestyle and that they'll do that in other ways. So that brings me to the next one. So that was number 9. The next one is getting dressed again. Getting dressed again, because now you're out of the house more. You're like, oh yeah, I haven't updated my closet in 4 years and I live in Lululemon and I'm tired of wearing stretch pants and a blazer on top. So people I think are going to take a fascination with and an interest in fashion and, buying. I still love buying clothes, but I think we're going to see an uptick in this, getting dressed again, like business casual, all that kind of stuff. And the last one, and maybe this feels controversial to you. If it does, you're welcome, I guess. But I think the God mode code is what I call where leaders go into having this access to knowing that there is spiritual work at play, that there is something bigger than us that helps us in a really positive way to manifest, to create, to align, to build, to resource our mission. And that's the God, when we go in God mode, right? So it's the God mode code where you tap into and you utilize your divine intelligence and spiritual principles. And I think that leaders that are doing this are going to be rewarded. I think they're going to be more empowered by the forces higher than us, because I think that's what the world deeply needs, is a return to love and a return to, hope and a responsibility socially, that the leaders at the top are doing good for the betterment of humankind. And I think people are looking for leaders to follow like that don't feel corrupt, that don't feel dishonest, that are purpose-led and movement-based, and an example of how to lead using spiritual principles. So I think that these kinds of leaders that tap into this are going to be more rewarded with abundance, because that will give them more resources to spread the mission and the movement that they have, and to also infiltrate a better use of power at the top. So more integrity, more transparency, like I think things that have not come out will. And social responsibility is going to be, I think, at the top of the value ladder for people when they're looking to leaders and who they want to align with, or who they want to hire, or who they want to work with, or who they want to be near or have as input. I think that the people who are just in it for the money are going to get burned out and fall away unless they figure out who they are and what their work in the world is, because it's not just for the money. It's about how we're stewarding our money and resources for the betterment of humans, for the world, to leave this a better place, our legacy that lives beyond us, for our kids and the generations to come. And I think that's going to be really front and center for people looking to leaders, but also who are embodying leadership in a way that is kind of unseen. It's what's happening in the background. It's what's happening in the quiet moments. And it's how they're utilizing their divine intelligence, again, for social responsibility, and weaving that into the fabric of the culture, and how we really want to change the country for the better. So those are my 11 predictions for business and leadership in 2025. Some of these have been underway already. I just think there's going to be more emphasis on others. And I think without a shadow of a doubt, some of these that are not front and center yet will be. And if they're not for you, or if they're not within your world, they will need to be, or there's going to be, I think, kind of like your come to Jesus moment, So that's mental health as part of the business strategy, having trauma-trained resources built into your company culture. Again, whether you're outsourcing to somebody like me, where you send your leadership team, you send them to me to take them on a retreat, or to come in and do leadership training, or you bring somebody into your programs as sort of a pillar and a cornerstone of that work, to have a point person that manages that department and whatnot. I think that's going to be super important in 2025. People can only take so much stress. And I think, the election, from a nervous system standpoint, we can see some of the residual effects even of the pandemic with the expanded and the bigness of the emotions, and how crucial this time feels in the country. So, I can do a whole other episode on the nervous system responses that I witnessed as the results of the election came in. But that's definitely an episode for a whole other time. So I'll see you on the next episode of Literally First Class. In the meantime, you know what to do. Keep it first class. Thanks for tuning in to Literally First Class. If today's episode inspired you, hit subscribe and leave a review. It helps us reach even more incredible women like you who are ready to level up, lead with impact, and make first-class moves. I'll see you in the next episode, but until then, keep dreaming big and taking bold action.